Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Tell us where you're checking in from this morning, what you're drinking, get your questions in. Don't forget, it's Monday, which means Marcus Myers will be joining us here in just a little bit. We got a lot to talk about because it was a very successful weekend for the teams on the 40 acres, for the most part anyway. But first, Jerry, I know you got an announcement.
I do. Friday's show, we kind of got off the rails a little bit with shoes. And I said I would wear a light-up shoe if anybody had them. Well, of course, Jenny Burton came through and got me. Look at the nice shoelaces here. And here we go. Look at all the colors. Okay, you got your orange. Now, let me back away. You got your orange, and there's even a color for Joe Z. Like, these are his dream shoes. The green duck, the orange, Joe Zura's dream shoe. Got the blue. But it gets better. Okay. Oh, hold on. Oh, yeah.
Hey, it's appropriate, Jerry Hamilton, that you're lighting up the screen because men's swimming and diving over the weekend lit up the UT Tower.
Yeah,
with the number one, Bob Bowman's group, second consecutive national championship for his team. Congratulations to the men's swimming team. I think it's their 14th national championship, something like that. Absurd. But yet again, Longhorns winning a national championship. It kind of punctuates a athletic department that is going on all cylinders right now. And we've talked about that here on Coffee and Football throughout the offseason in football. Not only did the men's swimming and diving team win a national championship, but Texas baseball team took a swept OU women's softball, 2 of 3 from A&M, and that rivalry series helping the Lone Star rivalry out right now for Texas. And then you also have other things going on. Women's basketball off to the Elite Eight. They play tonight at 6 o'clock on ESPN for a chance to go back to the Final Four a second straight year. A lot of news going on. Of course, there was the Friday. Was it Thursday or Friday, Jerry? Thursday, which the tip in from Purdue, which was so awesome. And excuse me, it was 18th championship. My apologies on men's swimming and diving. I do want to say this. The reason I said 14th, it's the 14th national championship for Texas in any sport since 2019.
Yeah.
So in 7 years, you're averaging 2 national championships a year, regardless of sports. But it is heady times right now on the 40 acres.
And somebody asked about the Director's Cup. I think Texas is in pretty good shape there. I mean, obviously if the women advance to the Final Four, which we're about to get to tonight, each one of those things helps, obviously. But I think the projections from Dr. Bretter looking Texas basketball run, I think helped that. I think they're looking pretty good as he projects them out for a very slight win over Stanford. Stanford men and women's not representing in the NCAA tournament in basketball, I think could be the differentiator there at the end of the day.
Texas, we will have Dr. Brett Wilkinson on tomorrow to go over the Director's Cup as well. But speaking of Blake, you had something for us. Speaking of all the positive things that are going on the 40 right now, Vic Schaefer, I thought, had something interesting to say that you were going to play for the folks today about just that exact fact.
Yeah, let me bring it back up here. Okay.
I can go on and on about our players.
StreamYard. Hang on. Technical difficulties on a Monday morning.
Go on and on about our players, but at the end of the day, we have tremendous support at Texas. Our kids are, I think they feel the responsibility of being at the University of Texas. It's not for the faint of heart. It's just not. It's not a place that you go to be good. It's just not. It don't fit. We're chasing greatness, and when they go sit in the cafeteria, they're sitting next to Olympians, All-Americans, all-conference players. But that's the University of Texas.
There you go.
Well said, Jerry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is, I mean, I think we all know that CDC has a meeting with these coaches, and it's like, hey, who the demand or the expectation is to be a top 10 level program, right? And at whatever program you are, and coaches know that when they take the job and when they come in, and it's not immediate, okay, but it's build to, and I think the coaches talk about it all the time. We talk about players pushing each other in a locker room. Well, coaches push each other with their winning. There's the expectation of winning. And that is a push that even though coaches aren't in the same locker room, they're at the same university. And that push, they all push each other to get better and better in their own ways while being friends with their success in their sports. And I think that's what you're seeing at University of Texas right now.
All right. Look, we got trying to figure out some stuff here on the back end for everybody on YouTube. Not sure if they're getting this stream or not. If you're joining us on YouTube, can you please let us know in the chat whether or not you're seeing us
They
live
are.
as well? That would be they are now. Okay.
No, they are. Period.
They are. Period.
Yeah,
Okay.
just the counter's messed up. That's all.
Okay, gotcha. Something was going on the back end there. Jerry, we listen to Coach Vic and we listen to the other coaches, whether it's Sark or Sean Miller or Mike White, those guys, Jared Elliott. It's interesting because they all kind of point to the same thing. It's that rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah.
The level of competition amongst your peers is there. Also, I got to say this, Marcus Myers has mentioned that before as well. So I look at this and I just think that it's heady times at the University of Texas. And you can say a number of different people are I'm happy about are attributed to that or contributed to that. But there's no doubt that it's one of those things that just, again, rare times. Hope that Texas can keep it going. And I will say this, there's no reason it shouldn't keep going.
Yeah.
They've got a great group of coaches on staff. They've got great leadership from CDC, and then they've got great support from the president's office and the chair of the Board of Regents. And so all of those things are aligned, as well as something like NIL, which can help that process. All of those things are contributing to Texas being doing what Texas is doing right now. Del Conte likes to say a united Texas is a reckoning.
Yeah.
Right, Jerry? That's what he likes to say. That's kind of what we're seeing at this point. Everything is firing on all cylinders.
And a $407 million athletic budget doesn't hurt.
No, it does not.
Highest in the country. I mean, look, that's why a big reason why coaches want to come to Texas. I mean, it's either Texas or Ohio State are the largest athletic budgets in the country. So do you have greater chance of success? Absolutely you do. I would say this too, and I know we're going to bring Marcus in. It's a good discussion. I think the SEC is also providing a push now that the Big 12 didn't really provide. So I think part of moving to the SEC, that provides a different push. Is it a better baseball conference? Yes. Is it a better football conference? Yes. Is it a better men's basketball conference? Yes. Women's basketball, just go down the line. So I think the conference you move into also provides another push that you didn't have in the Big 12. So I think everything's aligned here for Texas to go through a great stretch of athletics with the understanding that it's harder now to go out and win conference championships in the SEC. But now that we have legitimate playoffs in football, right, to go with the March Madness and baseball setup, you don't have to always win your conference to go on and have a great, great season. Because it's harder to win conference championships in the SEC. But there's something beyond that now. We're in the Big 12. I mean, look, if you didn't win the Big 12 in football, you didn't really have the path forward. Now with the college football playoff, even if you don't win the SEC, there's a path forward for you because it's hard to win this league.
Jerry, I don't know what happened to Bobby, but
I'm always had a power surge. Trying to bring in Marcus Myers, a different type of power surge.
I was trying to dial him back in, man. Dang. Well, yeah, we'll go ahead and bring in Marcus here. Good morning to you, Marcus.
I was running from my mute button, so I didn't mess it up. Good morning, fellas. How's everybody doing?
Great, man. Great. We were just talking about that. That the lifting all tides lift all the boat. With what Vic said about Texas athletics right now. And one of the things I talk about is coaches push coaches, even though they're not in the same office or the same building, right? Through their winning, the expectations when you're hired at Texas, the resumes all those guys bring in, having the largest athletic budget in the country, or Texas, Ohio State. It's normally Texas, slightly over Ohio State. But Marcus, kind of your thoughts on what we were talking about, because I think it's a university thing, like where you guys used to push each other in a locker room. Well, coaches do that from a university standpoint too, even without words, right? It's results.
Well, but I mean, I would even say there's words to it because they have, all staff meetings, right? Where it's every coach on campus and they're all in the same room. You don't want to be the one coach in that room any differently than you don't want to be the player that's singled out on film, right? So I think they are all taking advantage of, the university. It used to be football, solely was kind of the what was it, the lighthouse or whatever for the university, kind of that beacon that drew a lot of people in. Well, now you have people sending their kids from literally everywhere. And especially when you even talk about the influence of former professional athletes, whether it's them moving to the city or just being comfortable sending their children here because they know you're going to get a top flight education and they're going to have access to all the resources, which then, kind of further begets the fandom of, hey, like, I want it now. Y'all have everything there in front of you that you can go out there and accomplish everything. So we expect greatness. And I think that's one of the things I love, especially even when you hear, to your point, Jerry, of Coach Vic mentioning he's chasing greatness, right? Like he's not after just being average. And I think that's a sentiment that you see, across the board when you look at the head coaches that, we're seeing leading all these different programs.
And speaking of that, obviously Vic and the ladies play tonight, women's in the Elite Eight versus Michigan, 6 p.m. for a chance to go to back-to-back Final Fours. Obviously the opponent, if Texas wins, and Michigan's a really good basketball team now, Texas a 9.5-point favorite still. South Carolina 13.5-point favorite over TCU in the second game would be UCLA. On the other side will be the South Carolina TCU winner versus UConn, who remains undefeated. So huge game tonight for Vic in the ladies and the women's team to go to back-to-back Final Fours. And if they do that, they will play UCLA. UCLA's only loss this year is Texas, so that UCLA be trying to avenge that. I don't think they obviously haven't lost since early in the season to Texas. So big night for the Texas women. Wanted to mention that as well. So we've talked a little bit about the Directors Cup and how every win plays into that. Marcus, kind of your thoughts. It's fun sweeping Oklahoma in anything baseball. Yeah. Great weekend on the 40. One more national championships and. Just your outlook before we get into spring football talk, which we got to talk about because they didn't have a scrimmage Saturday, but they had a key practice.
Yeah, I mean, it's just cool to see, right? You sweep OU, you get the best of A&M in softball in the series, another national championship and reason to light the tower. And then, the ladies are able to kind of continue to carry the mantle. And, I know I hadn't been on since, the men's team played, but even the fact that they were able to get as far as they did in that game, with some of the injuries starting to pile up. And I think I've heard you mention this, Jerry. I don't know. I might have shared this with you before, but one of my good friends, Andre Jones, his godson is Braden Burries. So I had no interest in having to see Arizona in the next round down a couple guys and potentially Braden out there lighting it up. So I'm glad now that, we can kind of turn the page, figure out, how Coach Miller wants to approach this portal season, and I can just, root on Arizona the rest of the season.
And I said this last night. People can take this to the bank. Hope could not have played if they won, and Mark could not have played if they won. His ankle was swelled up like a grapefruit. Those two guys would not have played in the Elite Eight game. Sometimes it's good. You had a great season. Now go to work in the portal. I don't want to go out with a 35-point Elite Eight loss. I'm sorry. A lot of people are like, well, you still want to go to – sure. You want to lose 95-60, like Rick Barnes did yesterday. I'll pass. But no, either one of those two guys could play if Texas had won. They were out against Arizona.
Look, I don't know what's going on with my lights here at my house. It's got to be my dial-up. That's clearly what's happening. The thing that I wanted to ask you about, and this is, there we go. Now it's back on. Marcus, we talked about Texas winning a national title and the actual idea behind lighting the tower orange and then having that #1 sign. I started thinking about it, and I wrote about it this morning on Texas Football. Texas is unique in that way when they celebrate national titles. I don't know of another university out there, and I tried to find one this morning doing a little research that actually has something as significant as that, as majestic and something that you can see for miles around, so to speak. You know what I mean? That people do that. What's it like when you see that tower light up after a football victory or a national championship? I mean, that, to me, that's one of the cooler things about Texas sports. And I know it's not on the field of play. It's just kind of a really cool thing.
Yeah, it is. And to your point, Bobby, I don't think I've ever stopped to think about it, but I think you're right. I mean, I'm sure there's got to be some type of tradition somewhere, but I don't know if it's as grand and, no pun intended, everything is bigger in Texas, right? Like it's a really cool thing to see. I know even in pregame, like when you get to that part of the video where the tower lights orange, the crowd erupts. And then, whenever you get to light up the one in there, it's really special. I was even looking the other day because I was showing my nieces, they like to joke about me being old and stuff. And so I was showing them pictures of, myself, my mom and dad in front of the tower. But then my brother, who was 5 years younger than me, their dad, and they see him, he had braids at the time and it's much younger. So it's a really neat thing because, I think we had the ceremony and then there was a point where, we went out to the tower and it was lit for several days when we won it, back in 2005. But it's a really cool thing. It's, again, it's kind of just this galvanizing force where, people go to the fountain to take their photos when they win a conference and national championship. And then, that tower is something that is identifiable across the city. And, for all of the different businesses that are in Austin now, you often get a lot of Aggies and Sooners and Red Raiders that are in the city as well, trying to kind of hold on by a thread. And now that we're in the SEC, you see different, SEC flags popping up. So it's always pretty cool when that's something they can't really avoid if they're moving around the city and they have to see it.
I think it's unique to Texas, and part of what makes Texas Texas. Jerry mentioned football, Marcus, for this weekend. Texas had not a scrimmage, which we thought they were going to have. They just had a practice that did involve scrimmage moments. I want to be clear about that, but it was more of a full-on practice. There were some pictures that were released with Ryan Wingo back at it, Arch Manning back at it. I was told Arch was not a full, complete participant, so he's not completely back, but they're working him back slowly and kind of being deliberate. Another one of the things I wanted to mention is how deliberate Sark is with injuries. In your experience, and just based on what you've heard behind the scenes, is Sark just extremely deliberate with injuries, or is it more of a sign of the times where he lets these guys, truly, he lets them heal longer than anybody. Longer than a normal coach. A normal coach, rub dirt on it and get back in there if it's a sprained ankle. Sark doesn't really take that.
I think you nailed it, more of a sign of the times, right? Like if you just look at the overall makeup of the schedule, it doesn't really behoove you to rush a guy back. And then you're talking about playing deep into January next year, right? Like it's the final game, which is what everybody is playing for, and especially at Texas and the talent you've assembled, is later in January than it was even this year. I don't remember the exact date, but I remember it being, it kind of being one of those things where I raised my eyebrows in that, like, the regular season is going to end and it's like maybe another full month before you're crowning your national champion. So I think if that is what you have your sights on, you rely on, your great medical staff and all the different things you have at your disposal to help, guys be able to recover and give them the necessary time. to heal. And then with that, you're able to, train some of that high end depth even better. And then you get some more insight into where can you use these guys, and even a glimpse into, hey, what, different things am I going to have to address in the next portal season and to finish out this recruiting cycle. Your lights going in and out there, Bobby. That's pretty they're messing with you here in the chat. They're messing with you in the chat, man.
Maddening. I don't know what to do. I mean, what are you supposed to do? People blame my dial-up connection. I do not have dial-up, but I don't know what's going on with my lights. They must be doing something in the neighborhood here. Hey, before we move forward, I need to say thank you to our sponsor on every Monday morning. That is John Donovan, President, Longhorn Wealth Management Group. John's a proud Texas Exes Life member who truly bleeds burnt orange. His wife and 6 siblings are all UT grads as well. So it's his family passion for UT that led John to brand his firm, Longhorn Wealth Management, and dedicated to providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services to Longhorn families and friends across the nation. John's been doing it for more than 30 years now. John was thrilled to see our Lady Longhorns advance to today's Elite Eight against Michigan. While the men's team last-second loss to Purdue was a heartbreaker, he was extremely proud of the guts and determination they displayed. So to celebrate also the men's swimming and diving national championship, John wants to offer a free private consultation via phone, Zoom, or in person to allow John to help you explore how working with a certified financial planner can enable you to achieve your own success by maximizing your wealth, minimizing your taxes, and ensuring your legacy. To schedule your free private consultation today, just call John or the Longhorn Wealth Team, 972-707-4900, or schedule online at www.longhornwealth.net.
All right.
I'm in the dark, completely in the dark. Hey, I'm going to back out, guys. This is ridiculous for me.
You're good. We got you.
I'll see y'all guys. I'll see you guys.
Y'all saw that, right?
Yeah. I was trying to grab a screenshot and I couldn't get to my buttons quick enough.
Oh, man. Okay. Oh, Jerry, you're muted, by the way. Don't forget.
Muted. All right. Sorry.
Now you're back.
Marcus, did you see the new shoes?
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's okay.
Okay.
Jenny Burton sent them to me off of Friday's show, man.
That's magical. Yep.
I can get you a pair. I can get
No,
you.
I'm good. I'm cool. I got what I need back there. So I'm okay on the shoes. Thank you though.
All right. So hey, let's talk a little recruiting while Marcus is here as well. I dropped some notes this morning on TexasFootball.com. Couple of big offensive line visitors this week. Ishmael Kamara out of Gilmer, one of the top prospects in the country. And then Keon Hemphill Woods out of Columbus, one of the real risers. He was a defensive lineman. Marcus, I don't know if you've watched this guy. I'm a big fan of Woods, of Hemphill Woods. 6'3", about 280. Out of Columbus High, coached by one of the Shobles. They won state 2 years ago. He was a defensive lineman, more so. Now he's transitioned to an offensive line prospect. I think this guy is one of the better riser prospects in Texas in 2027. He has a real quickness, great feet, good bend, real aggression to him. Plays in a district that has good athletes, plays a lot of physical football. It's one of the better small school districts in the state. It's not playing obviously in DFW or greater Houston area, but I love this guy as a prospect because I think he has the piss and vinegar and the fight to go with the athleticism. But he'll be back on campus this week. It'll be his second visit since the calendar turned to 2026. Obviously, Texas offered him March 9th. He set up a June 5th through 7th OV. So offensive line kind of coming into focus here. They had a number of guys on campus over the weekend. Brian Swanson from South Oak Cliff, Reed Ramsire, out of the First Academy in Orlando, where I was last week. I saw him before that unofficial visit, and a couple of others as well. But Marcus, this is a really good athlete playing on the offensive line.
Yeah, man. Like, and you nailed it. Like that aggression, I don't really care about the competition. Just the fact that he takes some pride in his work. He wants to finish, plays off. You see him driving folks off the screen and laying on them a bit, when he gets them on the ground. So I think guys like that are, certainly the type that you want to have in your program, because you're not having to teach them about physicality. You're not having to encourage it or coach it out of them. It's something that is innate. And he's probably one of those guys, Jerry, that one of the first questions I know you always like to ask is, why football? And for him, it's got to be, he gets a chance to hit people. So, I'm a big fan of those type of players when you see them on film.
And other part of those notes from this morning, which we had broke the news on all these guys when I traveled down the Southeast, but all these guys remain locked in. For April 11th, 12th, I think there will be some few guys on campus this weekend. You have Texas relays, but it's also Easter weekend as well. Yeah. So not a big visit weekend necessarily for Texas. The 11th, 12th is going to be. And three of those big names that'll be coming in is Jabarius Garrett, the edge linebacker out of Viger High near Pritchard, Mobile area. He's coming in for his first visit to Texas. King Hall from Dothan, who I think is one of the best defensive backs in the country, period. 6 foot 195, can play corner, can play that big nickel. He can play safety. He can do it all. He's coming in April 11th, 12th for a first unofficial visit with his family. Mom doesn't like flying, so that's one of the things Texas has to overcome. Alabama finally offered him. His sister played volleyball at Alabama, but I don't think it's a lot. Jabarius Garrett decommitted from Bama, doesn't even have an OV set up to Bama. And then Jannard Albright, this stud athlete, safety, out of Effingham County down in Springfield, Georgia, a little north of Savannah. All three of those guys still coming in the 11th, 12th, and I think there's going to be other guys added to that list. So Texas, the rest of the whole month of April here, it's big visit weekends to continue to lock up OVs in June as that list of that number builds. I think we're at 48 known, 48 announced right now. Junior James was the big news over the weekend, the safety out of Thompson High in Alabaster, Alabama. He locked in his official visit to Texas on his first ever unofficial visit. He's 6'3", 190-pound safety that Will Muschamp, Blake Gideon, they really like him as a prospect. Now, he has ties to the Tongvailoa family, so will that lead him to Alabama? Things have changed at Alabama. He does have the Alabama OV. After the Texas OV, he also has Oregon and one other. So that was big news that he added his OV over the weekend. So we're at 48 announced known OVs. I think that number is really about 53 or 54. Some guys are just going to announce those visits as they may announce them all together. They may announce them on their own timeline. But I think there's also 4 or 5 others that Texas will add to that list.
Yep.
Got a super chat for you real quick, Jerry. Going back to your shoes for a moment. Aspen says those don't count. You need the LA Gear OGs.
I'll have to look into that. But I like these because they have – I mean, you like the orange shoes that you light up, man. There's the orange. It doesn't look – I mean, these are Bevo Boulevard quality shoes to walk around in. I'll say that with the nice – Jenny Burton did this, Marcus. Jenny's got the shoe game going. It's good stuff.
She has a plug.
Very excited. I was very excited when I got back off the road and saw these.
They would look really good behind you, Marcus, with that other collection. I'm just saying.
Yeah, sure.
You should wear these to your team reunion next time.
Well, I won't get to go this year. I think I told you I'm gonna be in Arizona that weekend. So okay. This time, this is probably the first one I've missed in a while. So, I'll probably have to wait till the season to be able to try to break something like that out.
We'll set a reminder so you don't forget.
There you go.
Let's take some football questions, guys. Roger Goodman says, who's been the biggest surprise at wide receiver 3 behind them? Is it time for Emmett Mosley to take that next leap?
Well, he's out, so it won't be this spring. He is out rehabbing the injury that he suffered in the bowl game. Mm-hmm. Khalil Lockett now out for the remainder of the spring due to injury. So, I mean, you're really looking at Ryan Wingo just getting back. So you're really looking at Cam Coleman, Wingo. I think Dalen McCutcheon's getting a lot of reps. Obviously, we talked about Jermaine Bishop. I think Dalen McCutcheon had a really nice play on Saturday. I think Dalen McCutcheon, Marcus is it's a big spring for him because it's a talented, obviously a first round transfer in Cam Coleman. Not that they play the same position, but that takes up a lot of targets in 2026 is what that does. And then you have some younger guys. And when you have a younger guy like Jermaine Bishop that's kind of turning heads, that puts pressure on the second-year wideouts, even though they may have played different positions. But McCutcheon is kind of tied positionally to a Jermaine Bishop. So it's a really big spring. And Lockett was off to a good start before injury. But for Dalen McCutcheon, it's a really big spring because anytime you have a freshman that comes in and is immediately on your heels, then that's going to push you in meaning you have the head start on the freshman. You have a year in the program, so it's up to you to hold off that guy behind you. I think it's a big spring for Dalen McCutcheon.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know if a true wide receiver 3 is going to get locked in this spring, so to speak, just because of the injuries and because they are running so many people through there. And, obviously the shiny new toy is typically the thing that we all gravitate to. But, you got to remember early on, he had some struggles a little bit later in the year. But early on, Dalen McCutcheon was kind of the only guy that they trusted out of that young group to be thrown in there. So it is, good to hear that he's taking, some steps to continue to try to improve his game. But, I've said it a million times. I think I'm president of the Emmett Mosley fan club. And so if he can get back healthy, he is who I would expect to be, quote unquote, your wide receiver 3, come game time when things matter. But I also like, Sterling Burkhalter because of his size. That could be somebody else that, not only can be a deep threat, but someone that you could use, to kind of block in the screen game and isn't, one that, you're having to find a way to manufacture it just because of his body type. He's a big guy. I haven't had the opportunity to see him in person yet, but I know I've talked to CJ and heard him talk about, seeing his size in person and that, he was someone that, we thought could contribute from a physical standpoint as well. So, it's someone that I think they're going to kind of move in and out of some of those different spots. But you're right, Jerry. When you have younger guys coming in the program or people joining the program, it's on the person that was already there to, really make it a point to say, hey, I'm still here. But I like the fact that, they have some depth. They have a lot of options that they can use. And again, I'll keep saying this, but the further we get into the season, you're going to need to, know who it is that you have instead of just jumping out there and hoping that, someone's able to rise to the occasion when in a pinch. So I think it's great that you have a number of guys right now that get opportunities to get some reps.
And then let's go over to offensive line. JT Kimball says, is Seymour's position a lock when he gets to campus, or will there be a competition for that guard spot?
I think there's competition. I mean, look, missing spring is a big deal. And if you haven't listened to the interview Hank South and I did with Lawrence Seymour, it's on the YouTube channel. And he talks about how Texas is trying to get him prepared. So there's a lot of Zoom calls with Coach Gatewood or Flood. Obviously, he gets to watch the practice videos. He cannot do anything other than that. He's finishing up his final classes at Western Kentucky. He's doing that from Miami online, which a lot of obviously stuff is online now. He's not over at WKU finishing up. But so he's trying to learn and get caught up the best he can, Marcus, but that's totally different than being in pads, being there, right? So there's going to be an acclimation period of time. There's going to be a learning period of time. There's going to be a learning the guys next to you period of time. It's going to be a competition. Does Texas want them to win the competition? Of course, but there's going to be a competition. I don't think it's a lock when you miss spring practice. It depends on how quickly you learn. Yeah. But I think what he brings, Marcus, he brings a toughness, an edge, a good chip on his shoulder, physicality, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, and he has a ton of experience at this point, right? Like he's seen a number of things. He's played some high-level competition, but to your point, Jerry, almost by definition, you can't call someone a lock that hasn't even stepped on campus yet. Right. And is stepping in at a position that is a bit more dependent upon the rest of the guys around him, right? And so, I think the eventual hope is that he's able to get to that. But to call him a lock before he's even had an opportunity to sit in a meeting room, to go through even walkthroughs, right? I think you would be putting the cart before the horse. So, he's certainly going to have to earn it, and he has the ability to. It sounds like, I listened to that interview that y'all did with him. He has the right disposition for it. And it seems like, largely he's kind of a no-nonsense guy, which I appreciate, in this day and age, that, he's just concerned about getting an opportunity to go in there and work. So carrying that chip on his shoulder will certainly serve him well, because I don't think from day one they're just going to thrust him in, right? We've even seen that with any other transfers that Sark has brought in. For the most part, they aren't just typically automatically number one on the depth chart. But I think he'll get every opportunity to earn that. And if he's prepared, then, that'll certainly be something we need. But, again, these other guys getting the opportunity to kind of stake their claim now will serve, well, I think, throughout a 9-game SEC season, and hopefully us playing deep into January.
All right, then our next question comes from Joe Z, unfortunately. But Joe has a good question here. He says, is Cryer going to start next to Biles next year and Smith in that second rotation? Or how's the starting linebacker core going to look?
I think it's to be determined. I think look, Rasheem Biles has been tremendous. I heard he was really good Saturday. Obviously, he's going to be good anytime you're on a football field. Cryer, he has a very important role on this team because the A-gap thumper is a big part of Muschamp's scheme. Mm-hmm. And I think Cryer I could see him being more suited for that than maybe the way FSU used him when they had to use him. But I think Texas is happy with Cryer. How's it all going to play out? I think that's the competition. And look, I think Ty Anthony Smith being out for spring in terms of the contact part of the spring and for most things in the spring, he's a really good player. But I think Muschamp's kind of looking at the younger guys. Rocky Cummings has done very well. Tyler Atkinson's very talented. Kosi Okpala as more of that edge linebacker. So I think Muschamp's kind of looking at all these guys right now. Marcus putting the pieces together in his mind. But I think Cryer's going to be right there as a potential starter on this team. Possible.
And the only other thing I would throw out is I wouldn't get overly hung up on some of the starters on defense because they're going to be very interchangeable based on the scheme and how the kind of flow of the game is going. So, yeah, you're going to need a thumper if, you're facing a team that's really focused on, running the ball, right? And if the game is a bit tighter, then you'll probably have him in there a little bit more than other times. But I also don't want to downplay, what we saw out of Ty Anthony Smith in the bowl game. He's certainly a dynamic playmaker on the defense that can slot in just fine right next to Rasheem Biles. And then, again, if you're up by a significant margin and the other team is, trying to throw it all around the field, or even just you think about some of the coaches that, you're going to be going up against, they have a penchant to kind of toss the ball around the yard. And so there's going to be a lot more space that you're going to want to cover. And I would, feel more comfortable at this point with Ty Anthony still in that role. But I think some of them will be interchangeable. And again, it's just this constant concept of depth. And not just from a standpoint of guys that couldn't start, but as well as, what do you need for this particular week's game plan? What's the best way to attack the opposing offense, and how are they going to attack you? And that will be some of how some of it's dictated, not necessarily solely on, is this guy, a tier below or above someone else?
All right, we're going to get some more football questions in just a moment. But first, Jerry, I'm going to let you tell everyone about Harry's.
Harry's, yes. Texas took the Harry's to Oklahoma and sent them back on their way this weekend. Did your old razor dull too fast? Irritate your neck? That is never good. Did they cost way too much? $30 for 8 refills? That's a total scam. Harry's Plus. What is Harry's Plus? It has an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face, refined blade tech for a closer, smoother shave, and weighted metal handle, Harry's heaviest handle ever, for added control and comfort. With Harry's, you get a barbershop quality shave with German engineered blades. Each blade is on at 3 different angles to cut hair cleanly at the root without tugging. Very important. Blade spacing is optimized to glide smoothly and avoid clogging. Drugstore blades clog so fast, don't they? Every cartridge includes a lubricating strip with aloe and vitamin E to calm your skin. Very important while you shave. Harry's owns their own world-class blade factory in Germany. No outsourcing, no middleman. It's the same facility that's been perfecting blade making for over 100 years. Harry's Plus also, as I said, has the heaviest razor handle ever, made from metal, never plastic, and that's designed to fit comfortably in your hand. Heavier handle means more control and luxurious feel. For a limited time, our listeners can get the Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/ontexas, all caps. That set includes all new Harry's Plus razor, one refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head to harrys.com/ontexas, all caps, to claim this offer.
And I'm going to tell everyone this morning about Hexclad. And go look at the pan you've been using since college. If it's warped, everything sticks to it, and it smells vaguely like burned eggs and poor decisions, it might be time for some new pans. I made the switch to Hexclad a while back, and these things are awesome. They combine stainless steel performance with non-stick convenience, so you actually get a real sear, but cleanup doesn't turn into a full workout after. And what I love is you don't have to baby them. You can use metal utensils. They're dishwasher safe. They're oven safe up to 900 degrees. These pans are built like tanks. And the heat control is legit. Cooking actually gets easier instead of feeling like you're fighting the pan the whole time. There's a reason that Gordon Ramsay uses Hexclad at home and in his restaurants, and every piece comes with a lifetime warranty, so this is basically the last set of pans you'll ever buy. Don't go through another spring using the same busted pans you should have thrown out years ago. For a limited amount of time, our listeners get 10% off your order when you go to hexclad.com/ontexas. Support our show and check them out at Hexclad, HEXCLAD.com/ontexas. Let them know that OTS sent you and spring clean your kitchen the smart way with Hexclad. All right, guys, more football questions this morning. Let's see here.
Blake, while you're looking for one, I just wanted to point out, David Keith is often mentioning my attire here. This is, in fact, a Longhorn shirt. It is the Howler Brothers, and it's their Los Longhorns de Tejas collection.
Okay.
So I'm keeping my streak going. I just switched it up a little bit today.
There you go. There you go. Roger Goodman. I don't understand why Wingo isn't wide receiver number 1. He's been with the program longer than Cam Coleman. I don't care about Cam's talent. That has to be a slap in the face, right?
I don't think so. I think Jerry's detailed this pretty well. So is Bobby. Wingo was heavily involved in Cam Coleman's recruitment. I think he understands. Look, there are certainly players around the country, and especially at the wide receiver position, they have this reputation for being a diva. That being said, there's also a number of guys that have grown to understand that their most success is going to come if the overall team is better. And so I don't think Wingo is out there pounding the table to say, hey, I need to be number 1, when he knows all this attention is going to get diverted to Coleman, whether that's from media or college defensive coordinators. And so he still has an opportunity to go out and put up his numbers, and quite frankly, I think he even has an ability to potentially surpass it. And so, or what he's done in the past, even just maybe on a per play basis or on some of his averages, and just face better matchups. And ultimately, when you get to the NFL, a lot of times you have a wide receiver 1A, 1B, right? Like you have AJ Brown, but you also have a Devonta Smith, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. So I don't think he's caught up in that kind of thing. And quite frankly, I'm pretty impressed by the young man's maturity, because he could have easily listened to a lot of noise. Let's keep it honest. There were some of the, Longhorn faithful that were willing to run him off. I wasn't part of that. I'm happy to say I've always been, in the young man's corner, and just understand that, hey, he's young. He's trying to come on at different times. And while he had some of his struggles, there was, times in which we were struggling to get him the ball. So I think it's, a plus that he's in that room. And if you want to consider him a wide receiver 1 in your book, that's fine. I don't think any of the guys really care what it is on paper. Their checks are still cashing, and they have an opportunity to still go out there and achieve all their dreams, both this year and beyond. So, I don't think he takes it as a slap in the face at all. If anything, I think he welcomed it.
We've had a few questions regarding Arch Manning, mainly his participation, like Jay here. What is Arch's participation at this point?
Throwing a little more, not taking part fully. That's the best way I can say. He's involved a little more. He's throwing more, obviously. But when it comes to more team things, he's more sitting, watching than being fully involved right now. But he is taking those small steps towards being more fully involved. But again, Marcus, not really a rush there. I think it's kind of a blessing in disguise. Sark even mentioned that because they're able to get KJ Lacey ready to be the true 2 because he gets to run with all the 1 reps this spring. Yeah. And I think that's very important. But Arch is mixing in more just in terms of throwing the football. But when it comes to the team stuff, he was more sitting, watching right now. And we'll see where that's at next week. I'm sure it's going to be a gradual.
Let's switch over to defense now for a moment here. Speaking of David Keith Williams, he had a question here. Something that concerns me is the use of depth throughout the defense. Coach K did a great job of rotating players. My concern is, will Muschamp do the same?
I think you have to. I mean, like on the schedule you're playing in the SEC, I think you have to. I think the whole key for me, Marcus, with Muschamp is how much he rotates guys this season is all going to be determined on where he's at with his depth, right? I think interior defensive line, they're in a really good position if all the guys are healthy, from what I've been told. I think there's a feeling like they could rotate, feel good about 6 by the time the season gets there and sort of the interior defensive line. That wasn't the case last year. So I think this year, I think there's a feeling, okay, maybe feel good about a 6-man rotation on the interior defensive line. I think edge with Zena coming on, I think there's some strong possibilities there for Texas from a depth perspective. They got to find one more, I think, just to kind of fill that in. Linebacker is so interesting, Marcus, because it's how they're going to be deployed and used. Like Brad Spence can play off the ball. He can be the edge overhang type of linebacker opposite Colin Simmons, right? I think you have some young guys that are showing some signs there. You have some versatile guys like Rocky Cummings, who it sounds like is going to have a role on this team as a freshman if he continues on some level. So, and then I think the biggest questions for me, Marcus, in the defense is the secondary, because there's so many guys hurt at safety this spring, right?
Yeah.
Missed time, whatnot. I think Smoke Matthews, we're hearing some good things there to compete back up at the corner spot. And a lot's going to play out on where's Littleton play, where's Masco play, and how do the guys fit in around that in terms of depth. But I hear that Texas is pretty happy with the secondary right now, despite not having all the guys on the field they would like to rep and really be able to make some sound decisions there. But I hear they like secondary talent, D-line, edge talent. I think linebacker, how those guys are going to be deployed is going to be the key there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that ties back into what we were talking about earlier. Some of that is going to be matchup dependent. I also just want to point out, like, I don't want to just rotating for the sake of rotating, right? No. Like, this isn't hockey. You don't need a huge drop off, right? Yeah, like I mean, and think about, like, when we've seen guys go down due to injury and a guy get thrust in kind of on the spot. If I'm at a game or I'm watching one on TV, I'm more times than not telling somebody, if they're near me, they need to go after that guy right now that they just put in as the backup, right? Yeah. And so you have to make sure that depth is quality enough to where the drop off is not one that's significant or going to put you at a disadvantage. So I agree. I think how they choose to rotate will be interesting. Both in the secondary and at linebacker. And I feel, pretty good about the defensive line and what they have there. It's just, letting a lot of the rest of this kind of play out. And that's what see, Stephen Houston says the same, right? Like, I'm not looking for a hockey rotation. I want, if a guy has proven it in practice, if a guy has shown that, he can be capable. Yes, we'd love to have a million Grayson Littletons, but that is not the norm typically, right? Like, as great as I expect Cade Phillips to be, he came on late, right? Not everybody is on the same timeline. And so, we'll just have to see how a lot of this plays out. But I think they'll have a healthy rotation in the spots that they need to. But it'll need to be, kind of centered around, picking the right spots.
And I would say defensive line is the most important rotation there is.
Yeah.
And I think they feel good about that right now.
I would agree with that.
Where they're at right now.
Let's see here. The realist wants to know, is it looking like Brad Spence is going to be wasted again this season by playing off the line of scrimmage?
I actually think this scheme change, coaching change is going to be great for him.
Mm-hmm.
I expected more last year. I think he's going to play. He's playing some off the ball. I think he's going to be put in more of a pass rusher position. I think he's going to play that edge overhang linebacker, as Muschamp calls it within that scheme. At that overhang position, Marcus, I think his versatility, I think he's set up to have a really good year for Muschamp. Finally,
yeah, I would agree with that, and I would also just still point out, like, it's not like he's a bad off the ball defender. I mean, the reason Texas took him is he was playing against them in Arkansas and wreaking havoc playing off the ball. That being said, I agree. I think he'll be used a lot more aggressively under Muschamp, and that's just a plus to have different guys you can bring from different spots.
Yeah, I expect him to have a really good year.
Likewise.
Jason here says, what would you say the floor to ceiling is for this team? In his opinion, he says the floor is 10 wins, ceiling is a natty. And what, if anything, is Texas doing for wide receivers to secure the catch? And is Texas emphasizing penalties / discipline?
There's a lot there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the ceiling is a national championship, right? Like, of course, like, I think this team is certainly talented enough for that. I don't want to get into floor, because if we start talking floor, then some things have maybe gone not according to plan, and I'm not trying to wish that upon anybody. And so maybe the closer we get to the season, once we start doing our predictions, then maybe I'll get into that a little bit. It's like you said, Jerry, I know there is a lot there. I think certainly Texas is emphasizing penalties with respect to their discipline, and trying to clean a lot of that up. A good portion of that is going to be getting a bunch of people in there that they feel like they can trust and get a cohesive unit. And so knowing that you're going through some different iterations in the spring, that may not come until a little bit closer to the fall. But I think, certainly they recognize that you can't, achieve the things you want and reach that ceiling if you have the penalties that they've, shown in the last couple of years. So I don't know, maybe I'll leave the wide receiver securing catch portion to you, or any of the other ones that you want to touch on there, Jerry.
Yeah, and I was going to say my floor for this team, look, I have Ohio State as a must-win game because of what the schedule looks like after, and it's the first year of a 9-year team SEC schedule year for all these teams in the SEC, and you only have one off week. So health of team is going to be huge the last half of the season. So the floor for me is dependent on the Ohio State outcome. That's where I'm at. I think if that game goes your way, I have 10-2 or 11-1. If that game doesn't go your way, it's obviously 9-3. And that's not where you want to be. I think Ohio State's a must-win game for this team because first year of a 9 SEC game schedule, again, you only have one off week, so health is going to be at a premium. You have tough road games, play good best quarter group of quarterbacks you have since Sark's been in the SEC at Texas. There's a lot of things that go into this schedule. I'm not going to say 12-0 on a schedule like that. Obviously, the whole goal is to get into the playoffs and let the chips fall where they may, and hopefully you have a 3 or 4 game scenario where you go get it done in the playoffs. For wide receivers, look, I mean, they don't need to work on Cam Coleman. I mean, but look, I think it's just consistent. I think that's just consistency. I mean, I'm not sure there's anything other than, so much can become confidence in those situations. It's like a guy missing 9 threes in a row and then he's hesitant. And then, are you getting your arms in positions? Are you getting your hands up quick enough? Where are your eyes? I mean, so a lot of people just say, go get on the jugs, but sometimes that's not it. I mean, sometimes a guy can have really good hands, but he's not in position to make the catch. He's not doing all the little things prior to ball getting to hands to be in position to finish a catch. So I think there's a lot of things that go into it more than just getting in front of the jugs gun and firing footballs 80 miles an hour at you for 3 months. Discipline, the last part of it, which, there's been some talk, I had some penalties in a practice. I think there's so many new players right now.
Yeah.
I'm not making an excuse. I think there's so many players right now. There's an adjustment phase now. What I think matters is where you're at in late August in the practice setting in terms of that, Marcus. Because the one thing we do know, if you're 133rd, 34th, 35th in penalties, your ceiling goes down as a team next year. I don't care how talented you are. I think Miami hovered in the 90 range, got low as 110 maybe, but they get a bailout because they're in the ACC. You don't get that bailout in the SEC. Not on the schedule Texas is going to play. So that is actually my number one thing more than talent next year is the disciplined play, the penalties, the timing of those penalties, everything that we've talked about the whole offseason since last year. That's actually my number one thing, not the talent. But I don't think you're going to have a full understanding of how much the team's improved in that regard or has to improve in that regard in spring football practice, not when half your roster overturns. That's not add water instant success. There's a timing mechanism of that. Guys are learning a new offense, and so you're going to see some of that in the spring, but you work the kinks out in the spring, Marcus, headed into the season.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the last thing I would add too is, even, I know a lot of times the focus is on the O-line. Joe Z right on cue. And Tony talks a lot about this, right? Is younger players often struggling, with some of the shifts of defensive, fronts and that kind of thing. Now you're having to kind of readjust, and sometimes that maybe, makes them a little more anxious or something. I think that may be something else that we see that plays in with, the experience level of this offensive line. And the number of snaps that they've seen in different places, different environments. You would, hope that certainly that is something that, would behoove them as they move forward. But yeah, you absolutely have to cut down on the penalties if you're looking at achieving all your goals.
All right, King Me, what do you see being the strength of this team playing on the road?
Man, that's a great question.
It is a really good question. I mean, one of them, again, for me, and I know people may think that it doesn't matter, but I truly do, is some of the different staff members that, Sark has brought on that has had as much experience in the SEC that they've had. I also think it helps that, Arch and a number of these guys have already been in some pretty big spots to play on the road. Maybe not as big as the ones that they're going to see in this year's SEC play, but certainly, they've been battle tested a bit. And so I think it's just having seen it already, and the bulk of the guys that you're going to be counting on, this isn't their first time seeing it. I mean, even, Arch last year, right? I mean, going into the shoe there, that's his first, road start, in a manner or in an environment like that. Well, he's seen that already. He's seen Georgia on the road already. And so just the mere fact that they have that experience, again, I just pointed to the offensive linemen, but, having guys like Colin Simmons and Alex January, Hero Kanu, Rasheem Biles, guys on defense that have seen a lot of snaps already, I think is a huge, benefit when you're going on the road, and then having a number of those SEC coaches, whether it's a Will Muschamp or Jabbar Jalouk, that can kind of help really set the tone for anybody that hasn't. Hey, this is what it's about, and this is what these other programs think of you when you roll into town. I think it's going to be a huge plus. Yeah,
I think the number one thing, and it's different in conferences, and some people would say, hey, it's football, period, especially college football. I think your defensive line is number one on the road, because you cannot let teams run the football on you on the road, because it gets to going downhill on you. If you can't physically be up for the fight in the SEC on the road, there is no fight. You get knocked out. So I think the defensive line, I think that's where and look, obviously Muschamp, everybody knows the history. There's a run, stop first, second, and third. Make a team one-dimensional. And I think Texas has to have, on this road schedule, they have to be able to make a team one-dimensional, because if teams start running the ball on you and moving the chains on you and your offense is sitting on the sideline, the pressure goes to your offense. I think that's the number one thing for this Texas team this year. And some could say, well, offensive line, you got to be able to do that. I think you got to be able to close out games with the run for Sark this year. I do think that's going to be very important. But I think when your show goes on the road, you got to be able to stop the run in this conference because it's a physical conference and people are going to want to try to run the football on you, and especially wear on you as the game goes on along at home. You have to be able to stop the run, number one, in this league on the road.
Let's see. Keeping up with the Sarkassians. What do you name? When is the last time a Texas team was this talented?
I'm biased, but I don't know if they've had a more talented one since our group back in 05. I think this team is probably more talented than that 08, 09-ish range. I mean, it will be pretty close, but I mean, we just look across the board. I don't know if they've had a team that's more talented, even if you want to lean on like potential draft projections, but I don't know if there's been one this talented in 21 years. I mean, I'd be, like I said, I think the closest would be 08, 09. But I don't even know if these guys have now what they actually go out there and do with that talent is
Right.
different.
Right.
But I think, the mere fact that we're talking about, there's an actual chance you might have 3-4 first rounders next year.
Yeah.
You can't say that about any other team in a while.
Yeah. I mean, look, NFL draft talent wise, this one has as much as anybody does, but that doesn't guarantee. And I said this, we've been talking about Ohio State was clearly the most talented team in college football last year. They didn't win the title. So what does it mean? It means you got a really talented team. Then let's go see what you do with it. But talent wise, it's there.
Yeah. It'll be the look back when we truly determine that. Right.
Yeah. What it does is it gives you a really good chance. Right. It takes away your margin. It gives you more margin for error. If you just have special players that can make plays on bad days or days when you have a B+ type of team performance, if you have a guy that can go out and be a difference maker in a game, you have more margin for error. But all this is going to come down to, as we know, how do they perform on Saturdays? How do they execute on Saturdays? Are they a more disciplined, improved football team? That's what all this is going to come down to. And that's more of a waiting game till you see it in September. But the talent-wise, you're where you need to be. You're where you want to be. And it's where you honestly should be as one of the top NIL football programs in the country.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Hey, I got to take something to task real quick, Blake. There was a starred question, and it was on John Shire.
I wonder if it's the same one that I was thinking.
It's where was this question? Hold on. It said somebody said John Shire is taking a lot this morning, and I wanted to bring something up that I just did not like from a coaching perspective. I don't know where that question went. Blake, do you see it?
I am looking.
I had it starred.
I don't see anything about Shire and what's
it disappeared. I don't understand. That question disappeared. Okay, so for those paying yesterday as a Duke fan, so Woodcrest brings something out. But here's what I want to bring up. Yeah, that was an awful loss, awful way to lose a game. Shire's got to watch it. That's 2 years in a row for him. But the post-game press conference, to me, was weak by a head coach. Weak. It's why people don't like Duke, by the way.
What did he say?
He started by blaming injuries.
Oh, yeah, I did see this.
Oh, Caden Boozer even played with the black eye. I'm like, oh, no, somebody played with the black eye. This is why people don't like Duke. That was soft, man. I'm going to take Shire the task on this. JT Toppin, ACL, out for this is the most injury-riddled NCAA tournament I've ever seen. So to come out complaining about your injuries, I thought was unbelievable. And that's why people don't like Duke, and I thought it was really soft. And maybe he didn't know what to say at the end of that game, but that was super soft. Oh, Caden Boozer even play with the black eye. I'm like, come on, man. Are we really talking? Jordan Pope played with a broken freaking foot. Okay.
Yeah.
This injury, Wilson at North Carolina and didn't play in the tournament. Knox at Arkansas was out with knee. I can go down the list. I've never seen an NCAA tournament this impacted by injuries and major injuries that changed teams' season. And for you to step up at the mic and start with injuries, and somebody has playing through a black eye. Give me a break, man. That's why people don't like Duke. And I'm here to tell you on Shire, you better toughen up, because if North Carolina makes the correct hire, and I think they will, it's going to get a lot harder for you at Duke. You better toughen up, man.
That's a pretty tough one hearing from a head coach. I mean, I can only imagine if any coach, that we have, that was kind of their opening statement. We'd flame them. So yeah, I think he's gonna have to get that one together pretty quick.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we are going to take a few more questions, but first, I need to tell everyone about Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group, and we want to thank them and thank John, president of Longhorn Wealth Management Group. John is a proud Texas Ex's Life member who served on the Dallas Texas Ex's board for 15 years and now helps lead and support the Collin County Texas Ex's chapter, while also consistently serving his fellow Longhorns as a certified financial planner and as the founder of Longhorn Wealth Management Group. And John and the Longhorn Wealth team were thrilled recently to be recognized as a member of the Longhorn 100, a list of the 100 fastest growing companies in the world founded, owned, or led by UT alums. And this great honor is bestowed by the Texas Exes each year. And in celebration of receiving this recognition, John is offering all OTF fans a free private consultation to learn how a certified financial planner like John can help you maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and ensure your legacy. So to schedule your free private financial consultation with John, simply call the Longhorn Wealth team at 972-707-4900 or schedule online at longhornwealth.net. And John sends a huge Longhorn 100 hook 'em to all of the OTF family. And Jerry, I'm going to let you go ahead and tell everyone about Von Lane.
I love it when airlines advertise low fares and then hit you with fees for everything. Want a seat? Fee. Want to check a bag? Fee. Want Wi-Fi that actually connects? Good luck with that. Some carriers are now making you pay $80 or more just for a seat assignment on their cheapest tickets. Or you roll the dice at check-in. Relaxing way to start a trip, right? Not really. Von Lane flips the whole script. You walk into a beautiful hotel terminal, no lines, no TSA, no stress. You board a coach with just 22 first-class leather seats, everything included, Wi-Fi, snacks, beverages, hot towel service, and complimentary meals on select departures. Bags, bring them, no charge. And the internet is Starlink, which means it's fast, reliable, and actually works the whole trip, not just when the plane hits cruising altitude and the stars align. Plus, Von Lane just expanded with more departure times between Houston and San Antonio and between Fort Worth and Austin. Von Lane serves Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Fort Worth, Plano, the Woodlands, Nashville, Memphis, Atlanta, and Knoxville. Go to vonlane.com and enter the promo code OTF26 for $20 off your first ride. What is Von Lane? It's a private jet on wheels. I don't know if it's a rumor or not, but I've heard Von Lane's going to start running a service between Jupiter Island and Medalist Golf Course soon, and between the Georgia football facility and anywhere in General Athens. I look forward to talking about their expansion and future reads. That Von Lane between Jupiter Island and Medalist, it may not have many on it, but it needs one.
I'm trying to bring that one to fruition, Jerry. I hear you.
Hey, I want to answer this real quick from Houston. He says, can we please start taking the audio and converting it to podcast form and posting it on Spotify? It's not as seamless having to listen to this with screen on and streaming on my commute. Well, I got good news for you, Houston. Every OTF show, as soon as it's done, is on Spotify. Obviously, it can't be live, but as soon as we are done, we upload it to Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere that you want to get your favorite podcast. You can find it there. So just takes a moment once we get done.
Yeah, I was gonna say before I started doing this stuff with y'all, Blake, I listened to all the shows like exclusively on podcast form. I these days, more times than not, I listen to podcasts, when I'm in the car and that kind of thing. So that's always been something that I've taken advantage of. So hopefully Houston does as well.
Yeah, there you go. And you can just search on Texas football on any of your favorite ways to get a podcast.
By the way, I want to respond to something because I think misunderstood what I said. Longhorn 4 said, Duke, please, Jerry, Duke will be forever good. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that North Carolina, if they hire the right coach, makes it tougher on Duke.
Yeah. And
That's
being
all.
good at Duke is also not good enough, right?
Right.
Like, and when you look at somebody, I think I posted this in our chat yesterday with OTF and was talking about it with some friends. And granted, they get a lot of one and dones, but heavy is the crown, right? Like if you choose to go after these guys, there's this long list of just amazing NBA players at this point that never sniffed a title at Duke. And I mean, they're working on a pretty extensive drought at this point. So just being good isn't going to work, especially, to Jerry's point, if they make the right hire at UNC.
Yeah, it changes the game. And it makes for it makes for for a young coach like Shire, it makes for a little different scenario than he's in right now. Because Hubert Davis hasn't been that guy at Carolina, and everybody knew it. It's just a matter of time.
Hey, one thing I wanted to bring up, because we've had a lot of people join since we've talked recruiting. But Jerry, you put a special note on the board yesterday. A high all things. I know you can't divulge too much, but I was hoping you could just maybe give a little tease here.
Yeah, I think Texas got some good news. When that will be announced, I'm not going to say, but I think they got some good news. And we've talked about like the majority of the players Texas is recruiting in 27, they will go through the wire, meaning they'll take their June officials, make decision in July, maybe even early August, right before their senior season starts. But there's a select few that are on the board as possibilities to do something before that. And I think one of those definitely is on track.
There you go.
I'm not saying anything other than that.
The chat's trying to get, but I at least helped them out a little bit there. All right. Vontae wants to know, guys, has Texas lived up to expectations so far in the SEC?
That's a great question, Marcus. I think, yeah, because I think these are I think it's a very tough league, and I think we all live in the super duper hyperinflated instant gratification world in college athletics now. But I think Texas has. I mean, you got to the SEC title game in year one. Did you win it? No, you got there. In football, basketball, super tough league. Basketball, super tough league. There's been some talk about the Big Ten taking over from going right past the SEC. Last year, the SEC was right where the Big Ten was, and they even had more teams in the Sweet 16. I don't think it has to be more of a trend than 1 year, just like the SEC versus the Big Ten last year. I think it has to be more of a trend. But Texas made the tournament. Let's see where Sean Miller goes with it. Sweet 16 first year. Obviously, softball won a national championship. Baseball with Schloss is going to be competitive. I don't know where you come out. And all the other sports, right? Texas has swimming, and you can go down the list. Golf. I mean, golf's super tough in the SEC too, by the way. I think Texas has lived up to my expectations. I'm not talking everybody's expectations. Everybody's expectations are their own. But I think Texas has lived up to my expectations early on in the SEC because my respect for what the SEC conference is as a whole.
Yeah. And that's where I was going to go. A lot of it boils down to how do you set your expectations, right? Yeah. And I think, oddly enough, it's probably a mixed bag. You probably have a significant portion of Longhorn Nation that feels like you've met or exceeded. I honestly, they exceeded my expectations to this point. Now is kind of where the rubber begins to meet the road, and you need some of those national titles and some of these quote unquote big sports or the revenue generating sports to start coming through. But I would say they've exceeded them in a number of areas. And then when you kind of look at the flip side of it, the folks that were already in the SEC, there was always a lot of chirping when we first came in of, we're going to be shown our place and, sit down and just kind of observe how we do things. And even to this day, with some of the success, you'll hear like, yeah, okay, we don't care about that, win a national championship in football, or, it's great that you made it to the Sweet 16, get to the Final Four in basketball for men and that kind of thing. Or, they're not going to respect, the women until, they hoist a trophy because, Don's done it a number of times. And you have Kim Mulkey there that's, done it. So it's interesting depending on the perspective. And then you always have the Aggies that just, their perspective is completely out of whack. But for me, I think they've exceeded it. I think, with all of the hype with all the, trying to kind of point to, hey, your money isn't going to buy you X, Y, and Z. I think they've proved it on the field in spots that matters. And, people are trying to kind of, play around with some of that, lingo in that, they're saying, okay, well, you're doing it in all the sports that nobody cares about. Well, people care about those too. There's a Director's Cup for a reason. There was there's a like an all SEC sports championship or trophy that gets awarded as well. And for years it had been like Florida dominating it. And I think maybe in the years that Florida didn't, it was Tennessee. And so when we first got into the SEC, I heard a lot of chirping about that. Well, Texas won that last year, and all of a sudden now that doesn't matter. So, I say a lot about, to relate it to different things, but heavy is the crown when you're a school like Texas. And I think that they're, doing everything that they need to do. And that's why you often hear about CDC, speaking to a united Texas as a reckoning. And I think, we're there, and you just kind of got to get over the hump in a couple of spots.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football, presented by Longhorn Wealth Management Group. We want to thank John and his team, along with Harry's, Hexclad, Von Lane, for sponsoring today's show. Of course, thank you all for tuning in as well. Jerry, you know what's later today?
Yeah, we got Longhorn live stream tonight, which that will be during the Texas Women's Elite Eight game versus Michigan, obviously. We have a couple other things today, football-wise. Basketball portal, April 7th. I think this week we'll start to hear some decisions from current Texas roster players, whether they're going into the portal, whether they're staying, kind of to set up the portal for Sean Miller and his staff, which is April 7th to the 21st. We didn't mention it today, but if you like following some of this recruiting, 3 of the Texas women signees are at the McDonald's game.
McDonald's All-American game.
Austin Gooseby tore it up at McDonald's first practice yesterday. We'll have more on that as the week goes on. We're going to work on getting Austin on the show post McDonald's game, so he can kind of talk about his experience and coming to Texas, and Trevor and all that. Because we've heard from Trevor. We haven't heard from Austin on this show, so we're going to work on that. But so 4 signees at the McDonald's All-America game. Obviously, baseball coming off the big win over Oklahoma. Softball had their 29-game winning streak snapped, but they won the series against A&M. They're 31-2. So a lot of things going on. We're going to have some football talk for you. We're going to have some recruiting talk for you. And tonight on the live stream, we'll be dancing around and talking about that women's Elite Eight game. See if they go to back-to-back Final Fours.
There you go. Okay, well, we will be back same time, same place tomorrow. Marcus, by the way, thank you for filling in for the remainder of the show. Appreciate that. And we hope you all have an amazing day today. So for Bobby Burton, Jerry Hamilton, and Marcus Myers, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you tomorrow.